understand, but I don't have that. Everyone thinks that. I don't understand how. It's shit. I don't like that. I honestly don't like that. You know, but you told me, right? You beat it. So the only one we're not giving to me is Pandor. Look at that whole script, girl. Whole damn script. Is this yours? Wow. Love it, love it. Yeah, get this program. I just sent it back. Look. Oh, thank you. That helps. Did we? Oh, we're not doing anything, so the team doesn't even have to get this. Right.
Okay, cool. Because then I can get the panelists to come up here. Okay.
I've already spotted my people.
Can you married tall? Are you gonna do housekeeping real quick while we wait
Yeah,
for
while
them
we wait
and then tell them
and
to
tell
move?
them to move.
Yeah, I can see
Housekeeping is like the bathrooms and then what else?
emergency exit. We all gather outside, um, and then if they need anything, we will be on the side.
On the
Then
side,
show
yes,
them, and
yes, I'll
they
point you to you and Sam and
just lift their hand. They'll come to myself, Sam, and Samaya.
okay.
Okay, she's gonna go through the so you can stop.
Good afternoon to people that I haven't greeted today. Um, can I please ask that the people sitting on the left, please try and move to the right, just to fill in some spaces on this side. And then while you are doing that, just some housekeeping rules. The bathrooms, when you go out on your left, you'll see a sign there, and there are signs on the doors as well. And if you need any help, Lim Konsa is here. There's also Samantha Mashapa, who was ushering you guys to go and sit down. And there's also Sumaya Hendricks as well, in case you need anything. We're just gonna wait for our panelists to come in now. Good afternoon for the third time for some people here in the room. My name is Nomatlozi Ramhlogi, and I am the Dialogue and Advocacy Coordinator here at the Nelson Mandela Foundation, and I'll be your Program Director for the day. It is an honor to welcome you to the Youth Month Dialogue, Born Free but Still Bound, Redefining Freedom for South African Youth, and the call to make good trouble together. We are gathered here at the Nelson Mandela Foundation, a space rooted in memory and in an ongoing struggle for justice and equity, to reflect, to challenge, and to reimagine. I feel that this dialogue could not be more timely. While many of us here were born into a free South Africa, we know that freedom has not been fully realized. Inequality, inequity, exclusion, and economic hardship continue to shape the life of a lot of young South African people. And so the question we ask today is, what does freedom mean now, and what must we do to claim it? We are here to listen, to speak truth, and to make good trouble together, the kind that pushes boundaries and creates change. So when our speakers are speaking here today, can we please listen? And then once they are done for the panel discussions, we can ask relevant questions that tie in to their speeches and to the challenges that we currently face today. To our speakers and guests, thank you for lending us your voices to this critical conversation. And to everyone here today, your ideas, your courage, and your vision are what will shape South Africa from here onwards. Your presence reminds us that this country's hope is not some distant possibility. Let today be more than a dialogue. Let it be a spark. I would also like to take a moment to appreciate the diversity in the room. We have the United Nations, Air Traffic and Navigation Services, lawyers/attorneys, academics. We have Wits Faculty of Best Advisory. We have Northwest University. We have University of Johannesburg, members of the government. And I was excited to see some people who registered and they were not affiliated to any organization, to the government, or to any company. So we welcome to you all. Now, I'm someone who gets most of my updates and news via social media. And I know I'm not the only one. And one day, as I was scrolling on TikTok, I heard, "How's it?" And from then on, I was just hooked. And that's where I've been getting most of the news updates from then onwards. So I guess we all know who I'm talking about, right? I'm talking about Amahle Imvelo, Jacks of all trades, Jaxa. So Amahle Imvelo Jaxa is an entrepreneur, content creator, and youth advocate who uses her voice online and offline to educate, provoke thought, and spark change. With over 230,000 TikTok followers and 17 million views, she's built a powerful platform where South Africans learn about current affairs, history, and civic engagement with clarity, wit, and relevance. She's currently completing her honors in international relations at Wits after earning her undergraduate degree in politics, philosophy, and economics from the University of South Africa, yes, UNISA. Yes. Her academic grounding informs her digital activism, and her goal is clear: to equip young people to think critically, challenge systems, and shape their futures. Amahle is also the former co-founder of Until, a pioneering marketing and youth events company that provided employment, mentorship, and creative opportunity for young South Africans. Everyone, please help me welcome to the stage Amahle Jax.
How's it? I know I have to say it. How's it? But good. Sorry, let me just, because I'm taller. But good afternoon, everyone. I had planned on introducing my bio, but I think you've done it justice. So thank you very much. Today we're going to have a conversation about what does freedom mean to today's youth in South Africa, and has democratic transition delivered on its promise for young people. So before I get into what freedom means today, I want to tell you how I actually started this platform of mine. Last year, we were obviously voting, and I asked my brother, "Are you going to vote?" And he said no. And this caused chaos in our family group. My mom had to referee. We didn't speak for weeks because I could not understand how, two people who were raised in the exact same house had different views or understandings of the importance of voting, right? And I then realized, we had a very big problem. That my brother, who is 10 years younger than me, had clearly didn't have the same learnings or understandings of the sacrifices that generations before us made in order for us to vote, or in order for us to even be in the streets of Houghton and to be able to walk. So I started this TikTok in order to, speak about current affairs. So foreign policy, wars. I think the first big one was me explaining why South Africa had to take Israel to what is it? ICJ. Why did I try to say the whole thing? Should have just stuck to the abbreviation. But yeah, I decided I would use, humor and language, and remove, this verbose language that intellectuals love to use, these complicated concepts. And I simplified it so people could start to understand what foreign policy was about, how the budget speech affects you, how certain decisions made in a parliament affect you. So I'd like to do a demonstration of how I actually do this. And I'm going to use one of my heroes, Dr. Naledi Pandor, who's sitting here in front of us today, to show you guys how I essentially translate something that's quite complex, or not complex at times, but something that people don't understand into something that's understandable. So if I had my phone in front of me now and I was told to explain who Dr. Naledi Pandor is, I would say, she is Dr. Naledi Pandor of the Republic, daughter of the struggle and scholar of the South, first of her name in foreign affairs. You get it? It's coming. Voice of the global South, defender of the Constitution and the conscience of the nation, breaker of diplomatic silence, signatory of justice at The Hague, and mother of South Africa's moral foreign policy. So now, if you've never watched Game of Thrones, shame on you, first and foremost. But then you've probably missed what I've just done here. So what I've done is I've compared Dr. Naledi Pandor to a strong character in the series that took over the world, Daenerys Targaryen, right? And in the series, Daenerys is introduced with a list of titles that reflect her power, her pain, her victories, and her vision. She's known as the breaker of chains, the mother of dragons, and so on and so forth. And so if this was TikTok, I would have borrowed a structure to honor a real-life woman who didn't just break chains in fiction, but signed her name on the global stage to challenge injustice in real time. So on behalf of me, and I think everyone here, thank you for your service. Now that you understand a little bit about me and you gave me the great bio, you've saved me some time, thank you. I can get into a speech which I have labeled Lessons from My Father's Cell. So I speak as the daughter of Usotomela Ndugwana, a young man who in 1976 was sentenced to 10 years on Robben Island for recruiting students to the ANC's military training program. He was just 20 years old. My father's journey started in a world that did not see him as human. He was raised in an apartheid South Africa where schooling meant instability and resistance meant prison. At 8 years old, and he loves to tell the story, or he used to, he passed away unfortunately, but at 8 years old, he would be outside the police station protesting and shouting all sorts of slogans Then one day the police captured him and they brought him back home and they said, you know, he's too young for us to arrest him now, but we'll catch him one day. And they were right. By 20, he was being tortured and tried for treason. He was young, he was brave, but he was also angry. And he was deeply in love with a country that didn't yet love him back. And when he spoke about Robben Island and the experience, he always used to speak about how God had failed him. How in the first year he prayed. My grandfather was a priest as well. In the second year he prayed, in the third year, in the fourth, and by the fifth, he had all but given up on the prospect of not only the freedom of South Africa, but his own life. Until a conversation in a courtyard with a man, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with him, if you've heard of him, but he goes by the name of Nelson Mandela. And it would be this man who encouraged my father to pursue his studies, even though he was in prison. And also being in the company of leaders like Walter Sisulu, Govan Begi, Tera Ligota, Amos Masonda, and others allowed for him to be immersed in rigorous debates about ideology, strategy, and ethics. So this punishment that was given to him by this government became a classroom, where a place where a young men, and many of them teenagers still, were politicized, radicalized, and forced to find purpose in confinement. Robben Island was the price that many paid for dreaming of a South Africa that treated black youth as futures to be invested in, not threats to be disciplined. And so growing up, my father's story was never just a bedtime tale. It was a warning and a charge. He always used to say, Robben Island broke my body, but it sharpened my mind. And so today I want to share a few lessons from that cell. Lesson 1. Freedom without dignity is not freedom. My father believed that being legally free but economically excluded was no better than being in chains. That's the painful irony of us as this born-free generation. Yes, we are free to vote, but how many of us are registered to vote when the time comes? Yes, we are free to speak our minds, but who listens when unemployment is almost at 45% in this country? When 60% of the unemployed have never had a job? When public schools are without teachers? When public hospitals are without doctors or dignity? When gender-based violence is a shadow that follows us home? When trust in political leadership is at an all-time low? And so many of us, young, brilliant, but disillusioned, are tuning out instead of rising up. And this isn't apathy, this is exhaustion. We are tired of carrying the hope on our backs while those in power carry corruption on theirs. We did not create these systems, but we are forced to survive within them. We are a generation that is expected to thrive with no tools, told to hustle our way out of systemic failure, the same systemic failure that is caused by the very same people who promised a new South Africa. And so we ask, what does freedom mean when most of us cannot afford to dream? Lesson number 2 from our cell is memory is resistance. My father often spoke about how Robben Island wasn't just stone and sea, it was a battleground of ideas. And ideas, unlike walls, cannot be locked down. Black consciousness taught them how to see the world, but prison forced them to ask what came next. My father began to question whether consciousness without strategy was enough to change a nation. That question lives with me. Today, I try to continue that legacy by unpacking history and current affairs in a way that resonates with the youth. Because I believe ignorance is manufactured. And when young people begin to understand how we got here, they begin to see how we can leave. This is what agency looks like in our time. As young people, we cannot afford to inherit struggle passively. We must repurpose it. We must make it useful. We must make it ours. Let it fuel our ideas, our innovations, our anger, and our art. Because the thing about this generation is we are not hopeless. Lesson number 3. The youth are the architects of every revolution. From Soweto in 1976 to Feesmas Fall to the young organizers feeding communities during lockdown, our history is not short of youthful courage. What we lack is power and support. Those who freed this country now shut us out of decisions and starve us of power. We are being structurally disempowered, shut out of policy making, underfunded, tokenized, and most times ignored. But Nelson Mandela once said, "With such youth, we can be sure that the ideals we celebrate today will never be extinguished. And yet, there is only smoke where there was once a flame." But I promise I have good news. The good news is that the ideals are not extinguished, they are themselves in exile, waiting for a generation brave enough to relight the match. I believe this generation can do that, but belief must be backed by action. It's time to stop waiting to be included in broken systems and start building better ones. And so when I was asked to be on this panel and the question was, what does freedom mean to today's youth in South Africa? And has the democratic transition delivered its promise for young people? I think the simple answer is no. Freedom is hollow if you have no job. It is hollow if your school does not prepare you for adulthood because there are no resources to educate. It is hollow if you fear walking home at night. It is hollow if you never see service delivery in your community. Freedom is hollow if corruption eats the institutions it's meant to protect. Young people no longer believe in elections or that politics will change their lives. Corruption has become so normalized in our country that it feels like governance is corruption. Freedom is also hollow if the bodies of women become the battlegrounds of so-called democracy. Young women, queer youth, activists live under constant threat of violence. So what use is it when the same people who are meant to protect us are the ones who assault us, who murder us, who rape us? What use is reporting when the police station is just another stop on the journey of being ignored? My father lost 10 years in a cell. I refuse to lose mine in silence. Freedom is not a finish line, it's a practice. And maybe this is something we have misunderstood as we, move into 30 years or 31 years or however long it's been, that when we were freed in 1994, that was not the end. The work was only beginning. And it would be a betrayal that we would inherit democracy and do nothing with it. So I speak today not to deliver any answers, but to extend a challenge. Let us become dangerous again. Let us become ungovernable in our demands for dignity. Let us honor struggle not with slogans, but with systems and strategies that work. And when history looks back at us, may it say, they did not inherit freedom, they redefined it. Thank you.
One more time, please. Oh, she's tall. I think you can all agree when she said, the current injustices may break us, but they must sharpen our minds. Don't tune out, rise. There might be a lot of education people in the room, but this dialogue is not only for them, it's not only for us. It is mainly for people that are not present here today, those who do not have the means or the resources to know about this event and also to make it here today. And so, our next speaker is someone in the academic field at UJ College of Business and Economics. She is someone who is passionate and highly experienced in the higher education sector, with over 11 years of dedicated service in university administration, academic innovation, and student development. Her career is anchored by a deep belief in the transformative power of education particularly its role in empowering youth and enabling social mobility. Currently, she serves as the Executive Secretary to the Executive Dean at UJ Economic and Business School. She combines strategic insight with operational excellence to support high-level projects and drive institutional improvement. Everyone, let's welcome Mary Von Dyer.
Good afternoon. So I'm not as tall as our previous speakers. I hope everyone can still see me and hear me. I'm very honored to be speaking here at this dialogue under this bold and courageous theme, born free but still bound. And as we reflect on the 31 years of democracy, we need to ask ourselves, what does freedom truly mean to a young person in Diepsloot, in Tembisa, in Mitchell's Plain, Umtata today? So freedom cannot be measured just by the fall of apartheid alone. It must be felt in everyday life through access to education, meaningful employment, safety, and dignity. If we think about Youth Day, that reminds us of the power of the young people that time that challenged the injustice and tried to shape society. It also is a call to continue the struggle that they started for equal education and access, for economic inclusion, safety and dignity for all South African youth. So today, I stand here looking at mapping the challenges that impact South African youth. And these challenges that our youth are bound, that we use, they are to explore how we can make good trouble in dismantling them. So the mapping, keep in mind that this is not a passive exercise that I'm going to do. It is about identifying pain points. It's about seeing clearly what challenges confront our youth so we can act boldly. And when we speak about a generation that's born free but still bound, mapping must expose these hidden chains and illuminate the pressure points where young people can ignite bold, necessary, and strategic good trouble. The first challenge that I'd like to go into, which is something that Makle did stem on or touched on, is the economic insecurity and youth unemployment. Now, obviously, this is something that we're all well aware of the percentage of graduates who are unemployed, especially between the age of 15 to 24. And it is said that our economy does not absorb this young talent or prepare them for viable alternatives. We talk about entrepreneurship as a viable solution, yet there is a lack of access to capital, training, and markets. What does this demand of us? This demands of us to break down this rigid job criteria, this traditional route of getting jobs. I believe if we look at that percentage of unemployment, how have we defined that? Is me being a hustler, selling tomatoes or scones on the street? Am I part of that unemployment statistic, or am I part of the employed? I think these are the questions we need to start asking, because that percentage might seem large, but I believe our youth out there and the others are actually doing quite a lot in the informal sectors in South Africa specifically. So in terms of the youth, we need to really reimagine the economic participation and redefine employment and unemployment for us. Next, I'd like to speak to education, the inequality and the skills mismatch. So when we speak about our graduates, jobless graduates, as the term, circles and trends, I have seen in my experience being in academia for the past 11 years, our youth are so focused on, I have a law degree, I need to be a lawyer. But that is just your academic competence that you have qualified in. There is so much more that degree that you have qualified in that you can use as transferable skills. And I think that tunnel vision of our youth, especially the jobless graduates, is something that is a challenge. We need to look at the fact that I could maybe have qualified as a lawyer, but I have communication skills. I have problem-solving skills. I have critical thinking. Those are other soft skills and other competencies outside of the academic qualification that I can open up another world of opportunities for myself in the job sector. The other thing is that the curriculum. We really need to relook at practical ways of bringing in information literacy, financial literacy, starting at the school level. Sustainability is something that we need to talk about as a challenge for our youth. I can give someone 5,000 Rand today, but if they don't know how to sustain that 5,000 Rand, it goes down the drain. It melts like butter in the sun. So sustainability and teaching how to be sustainable with what you are given, whether it's capital, whether it's opportunities, how to make that sustain for yourself is a challenge that our youth are not equipped to manage and are not taught. And that is something we need to think about in our curriculums. Next, I'd like to talk to the crime, the gender-based violence, and the safety that our youth experience as a challenge, which therefore obviously stems into the abuse, substance abuse that occurs. Because as much as some of us don't want to speak about it, when you are not able to find a job, you feel there's no way out. These are the avenues that some of our youth go down. And we need to start having open dialogue and conversations about this. We need to start speaking to our youth about the challenges of leading to substance abuse, to answer the questions or solve the problems that they can't solve. Then we talk to mental health, which I won't touch on too much because I know we have another speaker on it. But from the point for me, the challenge I see with our youth is our youth don't have a growth mindset approach. So Carol Dweck came up with the growth mindset theory of the fact that I can do something as long as I put my mind to it. So whereas I can say I have failed, I can say I have not yet achieved. Changing a mindset can change your whole environment. Positive thinking, always believing, having hope, that is very important that our youth needs to have. And I think us need to also promote that in the environment. Give them hope, push positivity in their lives. Then we talk about the challenge of the digital divide, which some of us will call now our digital apartheid, for those that have and those that don't have devices. So some youth enjoy fast Wi-Fi, AI tools, but others lack electricity. They can't even charge their mobile devices, but yet they are needing to be connected online for classes. These are things and access that we need to talk about that are challenges for them. The digital economy is becoming a new form of exclusion. So we need to establish a way to be more inclusive with the digital world for our youth, especially those in Tembisa, in Deep Sloot. I know there is one person that told me that they have open Wi-Fi in their household. They have unlimited Wi-Fi, which is capped, which the payment is capped, but they keep it open so that when students come by, they can use the open Wi-Fi to use it as opportunity, to surf the net, to find out information, job search, whatever the case is. It's small things like that, how we can make small differences. Our youth, as much as we know there are challenges, there are setbacks, they're still innovators. I don't come here with a doomsday approach. I come here with the fact that some of our youth are still activists as well. As you can see, we have a Mahli. We have Vukosi, who will be coming up later. There are youth that are busy coding in their garages. There are youth that are organizing food gardens in Soweto. We have youth that are launching platforms, being activists on social media platforms. They are making waves, they are making change. I think these need to be our role models and our leaders and our mentors. Because something I've realized is you need to have a mentor in South Africa in this day. Partner with a mentor, because that is how you will achieve success, by mimicking, shadowing, role modeling, all of the things to be successful. So in terms of my conclusion for mapping, we cannot change what we do not confront, and we cannot confront what we refuse to name. Mapping the challenges of today must help us plot the coordinates of freedom for tomorrow. So what must follow this mapping? We need to co-create policies with youth, not just for them, but include their voice. We need to invest in education that prepares youth for tomorrow, not for the yesterday. Practical, information, financial literacies, and AI 4IR technology literacies. We need to expand the mental, the growth mindset health, and the economic inclusion platforms, and just to be more open to have these dialogues about mental health. And then use the institutions, the public, the private, and academic sectors to support the youth solutions, where we have hackathons, where we have workshops, we have hubs or indabas for these youth. As we map the pain points of our democracy, let's also mark the pressure points for transformation. The call to make good trouble reminds us that disruption is not destructive when it's rooted in justice, care, and vision. I leave you with the fact that you, the youth of this country, are not powerless. Your voice is your tool. Your ideas are your weapons. Your unity is your power. So let us map boldly, let us disrupt wisely, and let us move forward together. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary Vaughan. I think I speak for a lot of graduates when I say after getting that degree, you have so much hope. You're just thinking the world is your oyster. But then when that doesn't happen, then you kind of feel a certain way. And broadening your perspective after that, it's also kind of challenging to do. But Mary Vaughan has challenged us to broaden our perspectives, look at other opportunities that might be out there for us, and also take those opportunities with both hands. On the 14th of June, we hosted the Sarafina film screening here at the foundation, and we had a full room. And I guess for me, that was an indication of the dedication that the youth has to not only learn about their past, but to also be active participants in the now. The next speaker is a lady who needs no introduction, but Amahle has given us a very brief introduction. And she will be speaking about the role that youth played in the past and the role that we can play in the current circumstances, in the future, in creating systemic change in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, Naledi Pandor.
Oh, good afternoon. I have no idea why they invited me to speak here. I suppose it's because I'm chair of the foundation, but I really think the input we've had so far has been excellent, and really I'm probably quite irrelevant. Nonetheless, I did agree, so I must speak. I'm probably one of the few who remember June 1976, being in Botswana and welcoming young people from my country that I hadn't been in for many decades, and saying, we're going to take care of you, don't worry. And hundreds upon hundreds of young people came into Botswana and really just saw it as a place to stop, because they wanted to go to the camps where they would be trained, because they wanted to be freedom fighters. They wanted to take up arms. So you're young. You don't know those young people, and that's why I'm probably a person who's been asked to speak about the past, because I've reached that stage. So let me recognize the program director, the panelists, you, our guests at the foundation, and of course the staff of the foundation who've organized this wonderful dialogue. I wish to, of course, welcome you to the foundation and to what I believe is an important discussion on the date of the 70th anniversary of the adoption of the Freedom Charter. June 1955 and June 1976 were epic moments in the historic struggle of the people of South Africa against apartheid. 1955 June, we had the Congress of the People and the adoption of the Freedom Charter. June 1976, the young people of South Africa rose up in protest massively. So these are important, epic moments in our struggle, and we should not forget them. I describe apartheid as a crude yet sophisticated system of social engineering that worked institutionally to imbue racism and underdevelopment in every sphere of Black existence. Black resistance had been in place in South Africa for many decades, beginning from the first docking of the Dutch East India Company in 1652 until political freedom was achieved in 1994. I often speak about freedom of the Palestinian people and the nature of their struggle. And I make comparisons, which they often ask me to draw, between their struggle and our experience as South Africa. And I'm always hesitant about drawing easy comparisons because they're not easy. And the large reason for them not being entirely comparable, although it is correct to describe Israel's occupation and racist attitude as apartheid against the Palestinian people, but the inability to fully compare is linked to the fact that in South Africa, we had a very long period of organizational existence. And this is the fortune that we've had. And other countries don't always have that opportunity of liberation movements that were, in a sense, the vehicle of the struggle. And that, I think, made our struggle very different. So that by the time we got to 1994 and had a vote, the ANC had existed for 82 years. And we had begun struggling against imperialism and colonial domination from the arrival in 1652. So it's been a long, long struggle. And we've learned a great deal from it. Our campuses, our schools, and our colleges in the past had our young people establish political formations that articulated and communicated a strident political message. So the past activism was based on organizational form. Up to the late 80s, youth were at the forefront of protests, boycotts, armed struggle, often in the face of brutal repression from the apartheid regime. The response of the apartheid state was ferocious, hence the killing of Solomon Mahlangu, the death under torture of Steve Biko, the death and bombing of Tami Miele, the death of Abraham Tiro, the death of Hector Peterson, and so many others. The struggle and the concept of resistance were enriched through young people's leadership. They revived organizational form through establishing a range of structures that served as the fulcrum of mobilization in South Africa. The violent reaction of the apartheid regime in the protests of the 70s, especially violent in 1976, was largely due to a fear that successful mobilization would lead to an uprising that the regime would not be able to control. And indeed, they could not control what became an unstoppable force. Even more worrying to the regime was that youth began to develop alternative political ideologies that went beyond the nationalist political philosophy that characterized many of the existing liberation movements. Black consciousness, with its recognition that self-hate and appropriated inadequacy were the intentions of apartheid, was a critical threat to apartheid and to the ideals held by the oppressor. Youth also recognized early on that they had to join the armed struggle and to support freedom fighters in their efforts to combat apartheid. Research, interestingly, by History Online, indicates that youth collected funds for the Southern African liberation movements. So young people in South Africa were not only focused in our struggle against apartheid, they were focused on all anti-colonial struggles. And this is part of the internationalism that is so much at the heart of who we are as South Africans, and something we tend to forget about ourselves. Over time, we have become politically insular, and I think we need to get out of it, because from the experience and role of our young people, they were internationalist in their approach. And this is why it is reported that they gathered funds for struggles elsewhere, that they campaigned against investment in apartheid, and that they took action in solidarity with students across the world. In 1969 and 70, students in South Africa took the lead in direct action and mass demonstration against rugby and cricket Springbok tours. It was young people in South Africa who joined the world community in sanctions and boycott. And today, as young people, we're not joining that struggle sufficiently. And it could be a game changer for Palestine. And it is us who have the best experience and the best example in this regard. So we should not neglect that. So international solidarity was a strong part of youth activism. Campaigns in support of freedom for Namibia, for SWAPO freedom fighters of the Portuguese colonies, that Angola and Mozambique should be free. It was young people organized in South Africa who advanced those campaigns. SASO, which many of you may know, and NUSAS, led campaigns to support imprisoned students and raised funds for students to study in other countries across the world. Young people in South Africa raised funds for South African young people to study in the UK, in the United States, and elsewhere. It was our own young people. They didn't sit back and say, oh, woe is us, you know, we are under oppression. There's nothing we can do. They said we can produce doctors, we can produce skilled people. Let us raise money among ourselves. Let's work with the Canon Collins Trust Fund. Let's work with others who provide such resources. Let's collect and let us identify those who should be supported and let them go out and prepare for freedom. Links of solidarity were established with student formations all over the world, and formidable joint campaigns were mounted. These included the famous and very successful Free Nelson Mandela campaign. Young people played a key role in that. These reflections on the important strategic role youths played occur in a South Africa that is confronted by especially challenging circumstances. And we actually are confronted with the dilemma of a failure to respond effectively to our current challenges over several decades. Due to a seeming reluctance to analyze the true failings of the state and other actors in our society, it is extremely difficult for us to often identify the true fault lines and possible solutions. As an academic, I believe very strongly in analysis, and I don't throw out slogans, because it's very easy to identify fault, but you need to get to the heart of what the fault is. And once you identify that, you then might be able to pronounce on solutions. But if you rely on slogan, on polemics, you're not really assisting us to address what are deeply challenging problems. The resolute and strategic activism of the youth in combating apartheid is, I believe, needed today to address the problems we confront and the opportunities of the future. Because remember that you are young enough to think about tomorrow. Yeah, it's not only today that matters. So indeed it is true. We have a really serious problem of joblessness, serious problem of lack of skills, but there is tomorrow. What should tomorrow look like? And how do we make it look like that? So don't immerse us too much in the problematique, because then we fail to think about tomorrow. Our youth will have to factor in the virulent and hostile geopolitical environment into their analysis and be alert to the fact that the battle is about socio-economic progress and the successful emergence of a political philosophy of the South. There's an ideological battle underway. It's not simply about solutions to today's problems. It's what form of society does the South want to create? What form of ethos, what form of values and principles should govern the future we seek to build? If we don't think about that sufficiently, I think we'll build a very dangerous society where it's easy to drop a 7,000-ton bomb on a building housing ordinary innocent civilians. If we don't think about how ideologically, as the South, we want to be different from what exists today in this toxic geopolitical environment. Our problems are described by various analysts as largely being poverty, poor quality education, and the absence of diverse skills offerings in post-school education. We also face low growth and a lack of resources for supporting economic growth sectors, and have an inequality that is reinforced by low growth and extensive corruption and failing public services. If you don't generate higher growth, you can't address our challenges. So a major part of what needs to be done is to invest in increased levels of growth. Then you generate sufficient public revenue to attack all the social problems that we have. You cannot rely on low growth to solve the problems that we're confronted with today. Analysts do acknowledge that the efforts of the democratic state to address social development needs, inadequate housing, education and health have been in place and have had some success. But they point out that South Africa, though it has an expansive social wage which offers relief to the poorest, these efforts have very little effect in a context of low growth and lack of export competitiveness. The deindustrialization that we've had, the poor level of manufacturing capacity render us uncompetitive and don't give us the opportunities we need in terms of securing greater income. Young people need to probe further and argue in public through organizations for effective solutions. You need to be clever. You need to be intellectual. This is why I'm saying avoid slogans, avoid rhetoric, avoid polemics. Do substantive work and place it in the public domain. In post-school education, I believe, and I'm always hated for this, I believe we continue to prioritize university education in a context in which existing vacancies in our economies tell us more artisans are needed in South Africa and throughout the continent. We have the least vocational education of all continents, and yet our focus and even our greatest investment is university education. This is a dilemma for us. I'm not saying we shouldn't go to university. I'm a former academic, love universities. I love freedom of higher education, academic freedom, love it deeply. But I do understand that we need a different kind of skill if we are to succeed as a country. A more robust focus on vocational colleges is needed, alongside a modern curriculum and integration of technology in course offerings. I've never understood how a college can teach fashion design and yet you don't learn digital drawing. Doesn't make sense, because then you'll be a very slow designer. So we really need to modernize our curricula. Our universities need to emphasize, and we should support them in this, they need to emphasize research and innovation and lift us out of the situation of importing all refined goods. Given our continent's failure to take the necessary decision to move away from being extractive economies and to create value addition capacity on the continent, youth have to address the challenge of how to own the development and sale of Africa's mineral resources. The solutions to our challenges require the adoption of a Pan-African agenda. Our separateness as 54 African countries is a weakness for our aspirations, because as discretely 54 African countries, we are too fractured to be successful. African leaders must become independent from the West and must acknowledge that the West can be a partner but should not be a master. This is what we've got to be alert to. So I'm horrified when I hear that critical minerals are being discussed with certain Western leaders when we don't have a critical mineral strategy as Africa. It's scary. One of my former colleagues in my old life told me how they were having discussions with Zambia about a critical mineral that is found largely in Zambia. And they were close to agreement. And he was very upset when I asked him, so Minister, how many factories are you planning to build for value addition in Zambia? And he was kind of, what is she talking about? So because he had told me and I am close to Zambia, I went to visit my friends in Zambia, my colleague. I said, I hear you're signing with this country for your critical minerals. How many factories have you asked them to build? Is value addition going to happen in Zambia, or are you expecting it to happen in the West? So this is a huge problem for us. We really have to become freed of the notion that value addition to our natural resources should occur elsewhere. Our youth has the potential to take up these challenges and I believe to resolve them. Youth led in the struggle for freedom, and they now need to lead, and I say wisely and strategically again today. So being youth doesn't make you the strategic leader we need. Being strategic and wise makes you impactful. So be careful, because what is happening in the lexicon is the notion that because I'm a youth, I know it all. I don't need to read, I don't need to study, I don't need to strategize, I don't need to plan, don't need to organize, I don't need to work with others. I can work only as South Africa. I don't work with the whole of the continent. This is a mistake. So be wise and strategic. Our ambitions will not be realized if we fail to internalize the values of the Freedom Charter and of our Constitution. We have been prescient in how South Africa's leaders have defined values and principles. The notion that South Africa belongs to all who live in it is an important one. The notion that there shall be peace and friendship is an important one. The notion that the land shall be shared by all who work it, very significant. And it is our leaders decades ago that shaped such values and principles. How do we make them live today? Remember, when they say it shall be shared among those who work it, they mean those who work it. They mean the farm laborer who's allowed by the owner of the farm to farm a little part of it, but never has tenure. They mean that that tenure should be in existence. So when we talk land reform, let's also be wise and strategic and look at exactly how we might achieve success through this. I believe we also must come to value our Constitution. It's not perfect, no way. There are many mistakes. It's a negotiated instrument, but I don't think you can get better than it. There may be modifications, but for me, the fact that our Constitution, in its Bill of Rights chapter, says equality trumps everything, makes it a classic constitution, because you have the right to religious freedom, for example. But if you believe your religion allows you to oppress women, you fall foul of our Constitution. You have culture and the right to practice your culture. But if you believe your cultural practices allow you to abuse others, you fall foul of our Constitution. You have a right to your language. But equality trumps everything. That creates the opportunity to build a very, very different, modern, progressive society if we make real on the instrument that we have. We have in large part failed to implement all of it as was anticipated. But in great measure, we've actually done really well. The separation between institutions of governance is one of the successes, I believe. Despite the complaints you hear here and there, there's no way that President Ramaphosa would be allowed by our Constitution to just have his office frame some law, and then he goes to the Union Building Gardens, signs it, and shows us. And it hasn't gone through Parliament, not in South Africa. So we have instruments that are excellent. We must express our appreciation and support for them. And don't get excited when someone stands up and says, we can't be ruled by a constitution. Parliament should be supreme. Parliament was supreme under apartheid. And we had the worst forms of arbitrariness and oppression. So the Constitution is an important protection that we must express views on consistently. So I believe that you can do much more than we oldies have done. I believe we need attention to really fighting corruption. Not fighting it, but really fighting it. We need to expose people, you know? How does somebody have 6 Ferraris? There's something wrong, right? How does someone who's earning literally nothing own a huge mansion in Clifton? Something's going on, right? And we need to talk about them. We need to expose them. We need to make them pariahs in our society. Those who are corrupt, those who are criminals, we should expose them. I don't know, I'm not totally good with social media, but I don't know if there's a TikTok site on exposing corrupt beings. But we need that, right? Because we know who some of these crooks are, right? And we don't do enough about exposing them. And they're not only in the political sector, they're in the private sector as well. So I think we really need to fight corruption, because corruption takes away resources from better public services. And so that is a fight that we should have. We need to also express appreciation for honest politicians who have integrity, right? Every year maybe we should say, well done, so-and-so. We know you have integrity. And we should say to this one, we know you are useless. Sometimes, at one point I was a little disappointed that I wasn't in Parliament last year. And then when they did the swearing in, and I saw some of the people who were being sworn in, I said, thanks be to Allah that I'm not there. My reputation remains intact, because sometimes by wishing for these things, you harm your image. So let's expose these corrupt beings and let's shun them. If we have young people who are working with integrity, with positive values, and developing a very different transformed South Africa and a very different transformed Africa, our country will benefit. Every person within it will feel the value of that kind of work. So that is my story about the past and about the role that youth can play in creating systemic change in current circumstances. Finally, if you become a public servant, be an honest one. It's very possible to do good work. I know it. You can do good things in the public service if you do your work. And it's a brilliant opportunity. I see some of the PhDs today, and I feel great because we gave NRF more money for PhDs. And I look at these young people and I say to myself, Naledi, you did something, So you can, through public service, make a difference. But again, it's skill, it's hard work, it's integrity. The worst thing, and I'll conclude with this, is to steal money from the mouths of poor people. I am surprised that thieves are not more embarrassed than they should be, because there can be nothing that is more disgraceful than stealing and leaving a person hungry because of your greed. This is our dilemma, and this is something we must bring to an end, and it is you young people who must bring it to an end. The student who gets a bursary from the National Student Financial Aid Scheme should be deserving of that bursary. The funny thing is, there are some parents whose children have gone to schools where they pay 80,000 a year. And then suddenly, when the student completes their matric, the parent can't pay 40,000 at a university, and they apply to NSFAS. Very strange. If you know that your comrade was in your school where you were paying 80,000, and your parents are paying university fees, and suddenly their parent who could afford that has applied to NSFAS, you need to call them out. That is what building a new society is about. It's not about calling at politicians. It's about calling out all wrong and ensuring we address all of it. So I look forward to being led by you one day, and I hope you're going to find an easier way of doing knee surgeries, because I've had one and my knee is terribly painful. But I wish you well in science and innovation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Naledi Pandor. Let's not only focus on the problematic, but also on the opportunities of the future. When we were in the planning stage of the dialogue, I remember asking for bios from the panelists and or the speakers, and Vukosi's bio. So now I'm just gonna have to kind of summarize it. So Vukosi Mashile is a human being on an extraordinary journey to optimize his full potential, driven by an unshakable belief that humanity thrives when individuals fully actualize their unique gifts and talents. At the core of Vukosi's journey is his dedication to mental health advocacy. He's the founder of iMeta Consulting, a thriving life coach and NLP practice that has impacted countless lives. He will be speaking about the challenges that we have today and how those impact our mental health and give us solutions on how we can counter those challenges as well. Thank you. You can come.
I am not an alien, okay? A knock that saved my life. In 2016, I stood in my university room with a knife pressed against my neck. I had reached the end. Until my neighbor knocked on my door to ask for sugar. Impeccable timing. At the time, I had been living with an undiagnosed depressive disorder. But as a black boy from rural Zanin in Libombo, depression was somewhat of a foreign concept. In actual fact, I had no idea that there is such a thing as depression. It was a myth. To some degree, I believe that I was bewitched, or my crazy heart palpitations, my anxiety, and my extreme mood swings were as a result of some sort of spiritual attack. I'm very Christian. Right? However, a month earlier, I had lost the pillar of my life, my mother, Florence Mashele. When she passed on, my entire world collapsed in an instant. However, I kept on moving. I kept on going, but I wasn't okay. I was the furthest thing from being okay. But when people asked me how I was, my reflex response was, Nishapu, I'm good. Kim George, Kistele. But in truth, I was breathing, but I wasn't alive. And today, a vast majority of young South Africans find themselves in a similar position. They walk around with diagnosed and undiagnosed mental health challenges, hidden behind smiles, reflex responses, and societal expectations of being strong. You know what they say, indoda must, umfazi must. Being strong, wearing a mask. Their struggles stems from quite a number of things. Number one, unresolved childhood traumas. Number two, toxic family backgrounds. Number three, parents raising children while still bleeding from their own wounds. And those wounds, they don't just shape behavior, they change how the brain is built and how it works. The brain becomes more reactive than active. Instead of focusing on learning, emotional regulation, trust, it becomes acclimatized to defensive responses such as anxiety, irritability, mood swings, and overreaction. These deep psychological wounds don't stay hidden, ladies and gentlemen. They show up. They show up in society, they show up in our homes, they show up in our classrooms, and also they show up in our relationships. They shape our experience of life itself. They determine who we then get to be in the world. And when left unaddressed, they manifest as what we now see in South Africa, the rising gender-based violence cases and the suicide attempts, both successful and unsuccessful. But beyond emotional suffering, many young people carry the weight of financial exclusions from opportunities that could change the trajectory of their lives, especially access to higher education. That exclusion breeds hopelessness. It reinforces the belief that no matter what they do, no matter how hard they try, they will never escape the cycle of lack and poverty they were born into. The truth is, without access to education or some sort of meaningful training, youth unemployment is not or remains not just a statistic, it is a lived reality. Reality that is a major contributing factor to the many mental health challenges that young people face in today's South Africa. Through my work, I've come to realize, and I use the word realize intentionally because when you realize something, you become one with reality. The moment a young person loses a sense of purpose and the vitality for life fades away, they begin to die on the inside, although they're very much alive on the outside. Every week, young people reach out to me on social media. Some call into my radio show. Some come into my private practice for a consultation. And I sit with them for an hour, listening to their stories, listening to their pain, as they speak of the unbearable pressure of being their family's only hope, the pain of sexual abuse at the hands of their relatives and their romantic partners. Sexual consent is very important. The devastation of being excluded from universities due to finances. What I know is this about people who try to commit suicide. They actually don't want to die. They just want the pain to go away. As a mental health practitioner, I try my level best to equip them with tools and techniques and strategies to find the light again. But when you are constantly surrounded by darkness, even the brightest of lights can feel dim. So, the next time that a young person behaves in a way that you don't understand, instead of saying or asking, what's wrong with them? What's wrong with her? What's wrong with him? Rather ask, what happened to her? What happened to him? What happened to him to change the way that he behaves today? That one shift from judgment to compassion can change lives. What happened to them might not be their fault, but it might have changed how their brain is built and how the brain regulates emotions and cognition as well. How it copes with stress and how they navigate life and all its challenges and, of course, its beauty. As psychiatrist Dr. Bruce Perry, my personal hero, he once said, open quote, "The brain develops in a use-dependent way. What you are repeatedly exposed to, especially in childhood, shapes how your brain wires itself." Close quote. Ladies and gentlemen, if that wiring is shaped by fear, abandonment, chaos, and trauma, we get the young people that we experience on a daily basis who have no hope of a better tomorrow, who feel like God, the universe, whatever you call it or him, has turned their back on them. Young people of this day, I always say that the map is not the territory. young people are guided by their inner maps, shaped by promises, broken promises, generational traumas, in a country that often overlooks them. 31 years into the fall of a new dawn that our ancestors had hoped would be kinder and gentler to them. However, it is more brutal, uncaring, and unkind. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to present this truth to you. Mental health education isn't optional, it is essential. It is essential in high schools where teachers struggle to cope with the psychosocial problems that learners present to them. Some teachers are not able to teach because they have to play the role of a counselor, and most of them don't even have the regulatory techniques to de-attach themselves after hearing a very painful a very painful story. How do you expect such a teacher to stand there and continue teaching physical sciences after being traumatized? It is essential in universities where young people face immense academic pressure. It is essential in rural areas like rural Mpumalanga, anywhere in the country where mental health illnesses are viewed as weakness, madness, and even witchcraft. Now imagine this, the relief that a young person would feel if somebody told them that, hey Joe, nothing is wrong with you, but something happened to you. And what happened to you changed your perception of life. What happened to you changed how your brain regulates itself. You don't have anger issues just because you're broken or something is wrong with you, but your brain had to adapt to survive. That one truth could change the entire trajectory of their life. They would know that they matter. In essence, all human beings, we are in the quest of this simple yet complex commonality. We all want to be seen, to be heard, to be valued, and to know that we matter. My name is Bukosi Mashele, and I know for sure that I matter because I am here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our speakers. I will now hand over to a colleague of mine, Kgaupalele Phala Etsile. She is the marketing and campaigns specialist here at the foundation and will be facilitating our panel discussion. Over to you.
Does this work? Good evening, everybody. I get to sit on the cute chair. Thank you so much. As she said, I'm Kgaupalele Phala Etsile, and she said it right, but you can call me Khao. I'd like to invite our panelists to please join me here. And we have a panelist I want to pick on. Yeah, everyone. Yeah. There will be mics we can share. Mweketsi, please raise your hand. He just came in. He was supposed to be a speaker, but let me just introduce Mweketsi. He leads the, as you guys would know, we have the G20 summit taking place in October here in South Africa. And Mweketsi is leading one of the subgroups, which is the Y20, which is the youth engagement group. And I'll just give you an opportunity to just introduce yourself a bit, but also just tell everyone here who might not know what the Y20 is. Is it working?
Testing? Oh yeah, it is. No, thank you so much. But also perhaps let me start by apologizing to my fellow panelists, but also to you as well, colleagues. I was rushing back from Northwest. So the Y20, we were presenting to the third Shepherds meeting for the G20, our Y20 as a lead up to the G20 Leaders Summit. So they had requested us to come in and say what is it that you want to see there. So, but I'm glad I made it in time to form part of the panel. I do hope you forgive me. So as has been said, so my name is Moeketsi Kwahela, and I serve as co-chair of the Y20, which is the Youth 20, which basically serves as the youth engagement group of the G20, right? So the G20, colleagues, for those who don't know, has engagement groups that must be led by civil society, of which Y20 is them, right? And essentially, when young people, Chair Lady, when we heard that the G20 is coming to South Africa and the themes are equality, sustainability, and of course equality, we said that we are going to be young people who are going to build bridges, right? We are going to unite for solidarity, we are going to champion equality, and we are certainly going to drive sustainability. And essentially our work runs through 5 thematic tracks. The first one is on climate change and environmental sustainability. What are those green horizons, colleagues, right? Essentially, what do we mean by, we want to lead a just energy transition? The second one, program director, is on inclusive economic growth and development, right? Those pathways to prosperity. Those of us who follow the news, and I was certainly following the Keynote's address on speech, would know that, plus minus 2 to 3 weeks ago, Stats SA released the quarter labor survey. And again, who is the largest demographic that's impacted in those stats? The third one is on AI, digital innovation, education, and the future of work. Essentially, what are those key competency skills that we need to equip our young people in terms of AI to set them up for success? But also, colleagues, what are those ethical considerations we need to consider around AI? I know some of you here do your assignments using AI. Huh? I know. Right? Professors are crying in TVET colleges, but also in universities, right? The fourth one is on meaningful youth engagement and reforming multilateral organizations for a just future. Young people want to form part of the UN, the AU, all these multilateral processes. Young people, and I'm sure many of us really came here because of Dr. Naledi Pandor, right? We want to see ourselves where she was, the spaces that she was in, right? And we're saying we not only want a seat, but it must be meaningful, right? What does that look like? The last one, colleagues, is essentially on inclusive social development and fighting inequality. We are very, very committed to saying we are leaving no one behind. And that is why the Y20, and by the way, the Y20 is the oldest engagement group. We've got plus minus 200 recommendations, none of them have been implemented. Part of why I had to go to Northwest today to the third Sherpa meeting was not only to present our one-pager on what we want to see, but to present on our high-level deliverables. And one of them is on institutionalizing the Y20 by forming a Y20 Sherpas Council, but also a Y20 Alumni Association. It's nothing new. You see it in the C20, in the W20. Oftentimes, Y20s, part of why they've been so exclusive that young people are not involved is because it's only for those who are close enough, perhaps doing work with DECO, but also other, foreign ministries abroad and all those things. We don't fault those young people, but it's time now for space to open, right? So our negotiations have begun. They began last month. So that's an international part, right? And as I wrap up before the program director hits me, I know it's Youth Month, but I still want to behave. But just 2 minutes, program director. Last week we also had our pre-summit, right, where our international delegates came in to basically say, where are we not finding each other, right? And I can even tell you now, some of what's coming out of our negotiations right now, some of it is scary stuff. There are young people right now, and I'm not going to mention countries, but we are fighting on issues of gender, of intersectionality, and it's scary because we have this thing now. Young people are progressive, and I'm like, hey, you will see in those negotiations that this thing of being progressive is very relative, right? But essentially, that was us in terms of our negotiations. But we're also running a South African-led process in terms of being inclusive. We are running working groups across all 5 thematic tracks, where because each thematic area is led also by the South African delegates, right, who are negotiating South Africa's posture on climate change, inclusive and so on, right? What's coming out of there, they need to come back to the working groups and now pressure test, right? We will then hold them accountable as the South African youth to say, I'm from rural KZN. I'm from Eastern Cape, and we recently saw what happened in terms of the floods in Eastern Cape. These are my lived experiences, right? So that is essentially just a brief bit about the Y20 and why perhaps it's important for you as young people to get involved. We've also began with our road shows. We've been to, last week, actually on June 16, I was in Kimberley. We've been to University of Venda, Northwest, and we're doing road shows, and we said, let's start with universities that are in far-flung areas and TVET colleges. But it's not only open to university students, we're also inviting with our local partners, young people who live in those communities. If it means we must taxi them in, bus them in, we'll do that, right?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So, this is a dialogue, and we apologize for the little time you have to ask the questions you need to ask. There's already hands up. So this is how it's going to work. In every dialogue, there are rules. So let's all, agree to some rules. Please, can you ask your questions specific to a panelist? Let's not do the whole ask to anyone. Please direct them specifically. I'm going to take a few hands. And you guys, do you have something to scribble on to get your question? I needed to make sure. So I did recognize you. Okay. So we'll start with the front row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll come. So we'll start with you. Do we have roaming mics? Is it fine? Okay. She's giving you the floor.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Kumo Kumalo. I am the co-host of the Born Free podcast in partnership with the Mail and Guardian, and I'm the founder of Misunderstood. Dr. Naledi Pandor, I have a question to you, and my question is that in the wake of Pan-Africanism, which is recognized very much throughout your speech, of course there's a growing concern about the lack of democracy or the backsliding of democracy. And we saw the OAU form as a result of dictatorships, which then transformed into the AU, which changed the principles and the governance that we saw within the AU. So my question now is, with Pan-Africanism and the growth of it and the calls for it, how do we navigate that when we see many of the countries that we're likely going to be cooperating with aren't pro-democracy, aren't pro-human rights, and don't necessarily hold the same principles that South Africa stands for?
Thank you. You can go ahead. Yeah.
No. Let me just...
You can ask as you stand. Please.
No problem. My name is Utzileng Kadimeng. I am the co-host of the Born Free podcast, and
Is
also...
it the same question?
No, it's a different question. But I'm also executive director of a youth voting advocacy group called So We Vote. My question is directed towards Amahle. So We Vote primarily focuses its work in the digital space on reaching young people who are otherwise outside of the realm of political discourse and dialogue to rope them back into the process. But what we're seeing is that digital media right now seems to be losing its capacity to speak reasonably and rationally to the young mind. Populist voices are dominating the space and are drowning out reasonable, rational content. How do you as a content creator see us navigating the space, overcoming these hurdles? I ask you because you're successful. How do we in the digital space overcome the populist voices that are drowning out reasonable, rational, rhetoric? I'm asking you as a successful content creator because you've managed to break through the algorithm and reach people where they are. And for us, it's critical because we are losing quite a lot of young people to these Andrew Tate-like figures. And we're trying to claw them back. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kate Kalal. I am the Director of Politics and Policy for So We Vote. And my question goes to Dr. Pandor. I think all the speeches that were given today were great and motivational and very inspiring to actors like ourselves that are very active in the politics world. And as much as I would like to have academic conversations with all of you, it would do my organization a disservice not to ask a very practical question. The end of apartheid, what we have seen is the declawing and the removing of the teeth of the resistance movement amongst the youth. We have seen the perceived necessity disappear, this hyper-individualistic culture appear, and even modern-day resistance, such as Fees Must Fall, do not have the broad societal power. What we're seeing is an inequality presented within activism, a vanguard producing rather than mass mobilization. And so my question is, beyond the moral inspiration that you have given us today, how do we practically get these young people back into mass mobilization to fight for a better future for all? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kukuletu. I am a lecturer, so my question is about the AI question, and particularly to democracy. And I think I will throw this to Pandor, but I think, Jax, you can also add on a bit on this, if you can. But really my question, and I was thinking about this as Jax was speaking. The two things that I was getting from Jax's speech is the question of epistemology and ontology. So what we know and how we come to know. And so my question really is about how then do we start to frame and think of democracy in the light of AI. So Moketsi does speak about the fact that we're struggling with students using AI for their assignments. And while AI is here to stay, I've realized it's not going to serve us to speak at the kids about AI. I did that for a whole semester and it didn't work. But really thinking of the classroom as a revolution, as Bell Hooks says, in teaching to transgress, how then do we sort of come to collaborate with AI to ensure that the principles of education as a political act are still reinforced for the, so that we can get the youth to start to mobilize and organize. Because I'm finding that because of AI, the youth is more resistant and they're moving away from the organizing because they're in their spaces with their AI and they're not critically thinking. Yeah, we can have that debate for a long time, but they are getting things fast for them. So that is sort of stopping them from this engagement and mobilizing and organizing. So how then do we grapple with democracy hand in hand with an artificial intelligence? Thank you.
You're the last one. No,
Hi.
him. I'll come.
Hi everyone, my name is Penyo Selinda. I am from Wits Vuvuzela and my question is directed to Dr. Naledi Pandor. For every
We are sorry.
So my question is, for every regime at the end there's a revolution that leads as a beacon towards freedom. In cases we see like Greece, Rome, America, France, and even South Africa where we experience our own regime. So is it in your own opinion to believe that young people can fathom the true meaning of freedom without experiencing or understanding the regime that you as a generation that came before us went through? Or do you think that young people have forgotten what our predecessors went through and they have a lack of apathy towards things like politics and freedom? Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, gosh. I don't know if I want to answer Mail and Guardian. I think that the backsliding that we've seen in the past 4 years is extremely worrying. But what is quite peculiar is out of it, there appears to be some radical thought emerging and a refreshing new voice on Pan-Africanism, particularly in Burkina Faso. So while the birth may be a really worrying one, the projection for the future seems positive if rhetoric converts to action. So I think that what is important is that we should always work together with a clear sense of what it is we seek to achieve on the African continent. And I think South Africa could be a leader in this regard. But what we've got to change is our antipathy to other Africans. And we have to identify what the problems are with respect to illegal immigration and how we manage and administer immigration better, rather than blaming those who take advantage of our inadequacy in administering. I also think that South Africa, being the most industrialized on the continent and having a far stronger manufacturing capability than many other countries on the continent, and better infrastructure, higher level of skills, public institutions with a great deal of experience, a very strong research sector in the higher education system. I think South Africa should make real on the regional plans on integration, on African integration. I think South Africa could be a leader in Southern Africa, in SADC, on giving effect to the SADC regional industrial strategy. But we focus very much on our internal problems and insufficiently on realizing that a lot of what we confront as a difficulty results from the fact that we have become an economic island and thus an economic magnet, and that we need to support the development of stronger economies in other parts of our own region, but in Africa broadly. I think that people don't learn by being chased away. So you don't become disaffected with the African Union or with our continent or with leaders who are not practicing democracy. You strengthen your own democracy, you share the lessons. In the AU, you are resolute on the postures you adopt, which I think we have been as South Africa. I think South Africa was an incredible example in the context of COVID-19, and were it not for the leadership role that South Africa took upon itself without invitation, we'd have had a far dismal impact of COVID-19. So there is leadership that can come out of the work that we do. But I also think one of the things we need to not become accustomed to is this notion that we shouldn't lead. So you find South Africa is reluctant because we don't want to show off, so, and that's not good. If you're good at something, be good at it and let the world know it. It's not a problem, right? So I think part of our problem is we don't want to assume leadership. You'll remember that NEPAD, and in fact the establishment of the African Union, came out of the leadership of President Mbeki, along with Obasanjo, with Bouteflika, so Algeria, at the time Egypt, Nigeria, and South Africa played a leading role in giving life to the new Partnership for Development, NEPAD, and also to a reimagined African Union. So leadership is important. And I think we can be leaders in democracy, leaders in development, but also leaders in inclusion and co-development, co-growth together. So that would be my answer. But I totally reject unconstitutional changes of government. And I think we should have strong sanctions in that regard and should make countries recognize that actually the best benefit for human beings is the right to choose and determine their own destiny. So on the use of digital technologies and perhaps greater access, I think what we should do is, rather than having an individualist approach, that every person or every student, every home should have wireless, and that the individual student should have access to digital technology for learning, I think we should create hubs at community or regional or other level where people can come together and form learning groups. Because what this digital learning could do is enhance individuality and create in people the notion that you don't derive knowledge together. Whereas I think the best knowledge and the best articles I've seen in science are done by collaborating researchers rather than individuals. So I think we should have universities establish centers where young people would enjoy such access. I also think it would be a wonderful way of helping young people to become future digital entrepreneurs, because they should learn how to manage a center. Some of them learn how to repair inadequate broadband, ensure that all the technical matters are addressed. These are skills that are absolutely necessary, even in a context of artificial intelligence. But even as we use advanced technology, let's not forget ethics. You know, when you do your PhD, that's when you do that ethics thing. But before that, you're just studying, and they're not, you know, teaching you about it. So when I came to the point where, you know, you had this ethics permission, I was a bit irritated. What are they going on about? But we should learn it earlier so that we don't plagiarize. I hear that there are some people who are doing their masters by going to something called ChatGPT or something. And they say things like, someone told me, I don't know if it's one of my children or somebody, told me that they go to it and they say, I want to write a 100-page document on genetic microbiology or the genetics of some physiological problem. And this thing just produces, you know, these 100 pages. And then these children take it to their lecturers. And the lecturer thinks a person who can hardly say boo in class is able to produce a perfect 100-page document. So we should be skeptics as well as lecturers, and also teach the value of achievement, of pride in your work, you know. When my lecturer rejected my 4th chapter, I literally cried. I've never cried in front of anyone before. I cried because I couldn't believe that someone would reject what I've written. And I did it 17 times. And then that one was approved. But you know what? When I read it today, you know, so teach people to take pride, and teach them just the wonderful feeling of having done something and it being your product and not coming from a computer. Well, on needing a revolution to achieve, well, the societies in the last 4, 5 decades that have made tremendous advances have not had revolutions in the past 5 decades. You had the Maoist revolution in China. It didn't lead to economic development of China. In fact, it led to an agricultural so-called revolution that was a disaster. But China, post-67, has done incredible things and has used science and innovation for it. So I think, indeed, you do need, the boldness of new ideas. But for me, revolution is not burning down the law library at University of Natal, where the best law books are kept, the oldest, where whole history gone, and you call that radical action. It's not, it's destruction. It's erasing history. So I think we need to define what we mean by revolution sometimes, and really be careful as leaders that what we call a revolution is not something that is just so destructive that actually produces a primitive age. And that is hard to think about as a leader. But you have to always say, where am I leading my organization or my members to? What is the outcome I desire? And sometimes the results can be terrible, and it's something we should have regard to. I think that if you organize well, if you've got a platform that people can believe in, you will not face rejection. But if your organization is intent on destruction, you must face rejection. Even I will shoot rubber bullets at you if you're going to burn a library, because I believe in reading. All right? So I do think that we shouldn't call it rejection of mass mobilization when we're running rampant and the police have to come in to save a building or a university. We must also watch what we do, yeah? Because that very university you're destroying is what could have produced our iron style. And these are things we must honestly think of. Of course, I'm old, so I know I think, maybe in a boring fashion. But I believe you can organize for the good. And I think South Africa can make a difference to the world because of our experience, because of where we've been. We are different. We have a mentality that is incredible. We have an experience that can bring into the world values that are just amazing. So I think we can help to build a better world as South Africans. And you can build a strong student movement if you've got the right ideas and good leadership. But if you have useless ideas and you think just having a crowd in a room is fantastic, you're not going to go very far, Okay, the last one. I think I answered the question on academic values, understanding what plagiarism is, understanding why you must acknowledge sources and so on, and do your own independent work. These are your responsibility as the lecturer. I was disgusted one day. I used to be a senior lecturer at the University of Cape Town. And I walked into the printing room and I found a student photocopying a book. I couldn't believe it. Photocopying a whole book, that for me that was like a crime. So those are things we've got to stop. And as lecturers, part of the reason for making students go and photocopy a chapter or a book is because we don't want to write notes for our lectures. We just want to stand in front of the students, have a chat. We don't do research, we don't refer, and so on. We've got to be good lecturers as well to build that culture. And youth will only want easy answers if we are easy academics. Finally, regime change should lead to improved freedom. Do younger people appreciate what South Africa went through? Well, I think as older people, we are at fault in not teaching the history of struggle sufficiently. I was Minister of Education from 2004, and I'm horrified that we allowed a situation in which not every student has to do history. We had it as a component in life orientation, but that's not enough. So I do think that we need to be sharing the story much more. Just wrote an article, which I hope it will be accepted, where I'm talking about 70 years of the Freedom Charter and its relevance for today. I hope it will be published. But I go through some history, in writing it. And one of the things I do is, I think we were talking about this with you earlier. No, it was with somebody else. Is I do, yeah, I'm remembering. I was being interviewed earlier, and I was telling the interviewer about how South Africa and its liberation struggle has been very intriguing for me. That people who had been oppressed for a very long time, in 1912, established an organization. And as they created in a small church hall in Bloemfontein, they realized that part of the desire of the oppressor is to divide African people. So they invite academics, doctors, priests, traditional leaders, leaders from Boleswa, Botswana, Lesotho, Swaziland, because they recognize that unity is strength. 1912, incredible. Then 1943, they try and draft some form of Bill of Rights. People under oppression. And then 1954, women organized, draft a women's charter, setting out these very advanced, progressive issues. So there's something about who we are and what we've done, which is just incredibly, excitingly unique, and we need to appreciate ourselves more. So while I do appreciate and recognize the need to talk about our challenges, I sometimes want to be in a room where we just say how wonderful we are. I think we need to do that more.
So if I remember correctly, how are we reaching the people that are seem to be radicalized and more towards the left? And how have I successfully gotten people to engage in education and not be so far right-leaning, as we see that there's this increase in Germany, America, the Andrew Tates of the world are taking over, et cetera, right? I think one of the biggest problems that we have as the people that know is we like to over-intellectualize things, and therefore we isolate. One of my strengths is that I keep it simple, stupid. Like, I break it down so that nobody will never not understand what I'm talking about. I have a gripe with academia and scholarship when I'm reading a reading and I'm just like, but what are you actually saying? Do you know what I mean? Like, you could have just used simple English and I would have gotten through this reading faster, right? So I think the rise of people going right and the Andrew Tates of the world and us losing, let's say, rational people or whatever, also comes from a lack of community. We are currently living in a very individualistic world, in a very me-first world, and this is the conversation we were having earlier. And when we live like that in this individualistic world, people at the end of the day are still engineered to find community. So they're going to find community in the wrong places, because you, as an intellectual, want to close off your corner to only certain kinds of people, right? So I think Dr. Naledi Pandor was speaking about, like, artisans and all of that missing. I keep saying to my friends, we need plumbers, we need electricians, right? But we've all of a sudden moved into this world of classism where I can't chill with someone who doesn't have a degree or who's considered an electrician or whatever. And so we isolate people, and then we're surprised when they then join these radical groups that have welcomed them. And so I think I've answered, I think, both of your questions in the sense to say that the way to reach people is for there to be commonality. if I'm doing a piece of content and I'm speaking about Iran and Israel, I guess that's the big topic of the week. I'm exhausted by it, but hey, let's go. When I'm explaining how, Iran and Israel in the beginning actually they were all right with each other as neighbors, instead of going into a deep, complex academic talk about how they engaged each other, all I said was they were courting each other. You open an embassy in my country, I open an embassy in your country. Every single person knows what courting means. So the reason you're losing young people is because you're isolating them with over-intellectualism, I think, number one. And then number two, I also think there's an issue of us, and I'm glad Dr. Naledi spoke about, history not being not a permanent, what am I looking for? There it is. Compulsory subject, is that we only those who have an interest in things now all of a sudden are the ones who are engaging in it, because we live in a society where the platform is curated for you. I think it was Barack Obama who said, if I'm a Republican and I search Egypt, all I'm going to see is terrorism. If I'm in the middle and I'm neutral, I'm going to learn about, when I Google Egypt, I'm going to get, go visit the pyramids. If I'm left-leaning, I'm going to be told about the Arab Spring, right? So technology is now curated for you and your beliefs, and it's very hard to now shift you out of that narrative. So your role with your podcast is to somehow capture that guy in, and I'm gonna say guy because it's you guys that are always radical and being weird, but what is that? What's that other thing that they're all obsessed with? The movie, they made the movie Adolescence about it. Incels. Yeah, that's a male problem, unfortunately. But anyway, I'm not here for gender wars. So you almost have to, and I think what I've done is try and find a way to speak to every person. How's it is predominantly a white greeting, right? So immediately when I said how's it, a couple of white people were like, oh, she's one of us. So now I've brought you in. The use of words like lacquer or whatever when I'm doing my videos, first of all, that's reparations. I'm taking your own words. And I'm making them black. But I'm also just trying to generally, trying to accommodate every kind of person so that every kind of person can listen, so that I'm not this person who is very, who's a type of person. And so when we're talking about voting, how I got my brother to vote was to say, you complain that your substation is always blowing up. How do you think that's going to get fixed? My brother now, whenever there's load shedding or whatever the case may be, is the one who's on the phone with the counselor, right? So there's almost also teachings that we have to have in how actual governance works in order for people to understand their role and why voting and all these things are so important. Next week's episode is how does the South African government work, by the way, for those of you who watch my podcast. So I think the baseline message is keep it simple so that everyone has access to information, and so they're not isolated and they find communities in all the wrong places.
Thank you. I'm sure you all saw my boss stand up as Amatle was finishing. So I'm the bearer of bad news. We've run out of time. But there is some good news. Some of the panelists will be here, so you can engage with them outside of this session. You're welcome to stick around. And I'm going to hand back to Nomatlozi, and I'm going to release you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kgaupalelwe. Thank you so much, panelists. I think I agree with Dr. Naledi when she says that South Africa has all the resources and the right minds. because those questions from the floor were great. So now I'm going to hand over to our head of communications, Tshepa Motsekua, to give us closing remarks and NMF stance when looking at the youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Noma Shrozi. You've done a fantastic job this evening as our program director. And so, ladies and gents, as we draw close this inspiring dialogue, it is my honor to extend our vote of thanks on behalf of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. First, I would like to express appreciation to the chair of our board, Dr. Naledi Pandor, always bringing thought-provoking, illuminating, and brave words. To our esteemed panelists, you are young visionaries, change makers who bring thoughtful insight and passionate contributions. Thank you. And to our sixth panelist this evening, our audience, you have reminded us of the power of collective action by dialoguing with us. And to the Foundation's team, thank you for your tireless dedication in making every convening in this room possible. It was actually our Chief Executive, Dr. Mbongiseni, who planted the idea of convening this dialogue during Youth Month. He stressed that it is important that young people lead conversations about what matters to them. The conversations need to be intergenerational so that the baton can be passed on by the older generation to the younger through dialogue. And so, tonight, I extend a special thank you from the Foundation to Noma Shlosi, Ramohloki, and Atenkosi Sigenu. These are the youngest members of our foundation, and they have put this event together. So thank you for heeding the call to spearhead this dialogue. Today, as you know, also marks 70 years since the adoption of the Freedom Charter in Kliptown. We are reminded that freedom is not a fixed point. It is an ongoing struggle, a living, breathing demand for dignity, justice, and equity. And actually, Dr. Pandor's words reminded us that young people are not just the future, they are the present. They are not merely inheritors of democracy, but active shapers of it. Her words echoed Madiba's words when he said, young people are capable, when aroused, of bringing down the towers of oppression and raising the banners of freedom. And so, as young people have always done in this country, the Foundation urges you to continue being led by courage, by a commitment to justice, and by a passion for radical transformation. Here at the Foundation, we have a newly adopted 5-year strategy, which we have titled Making Good Trouble. This draws from inspiration from Madiba's Xhosa name, as you know, Kholihlahla, colloquially translated as troublemaker, and the words of former US civil rights leader and Congressman John Lewis, who said, when you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, say something. Do something, get in trouble, but good trouble, necessary trouble. The Foundation here, we believe in stirring things up for justice, for truth, and the freedom of all. So as we leave here today, let us go forward together, committed to making good trouble, necessary trouble. From the Foundation, thank you very much.
We have come to the end of our dialogue program for today. For those that will be posting, I saw a lot of cameras here. I couldn't even move in the front. So we'll be using hashtag NMF Youth Month Dialogue and hashtag Mandela Youth. From here, we have snacks downstairs. So there are stairs on your right. So you just go down and then you have some snacks. And for our panelists, Mercado for interviews, and then you will join the rest of us later on. Thank you so much.